Shalom, family, and thank you so much for joining us for this week's weekly news update. And it's always our pleasure to sit with you each week and go over some of the important headlines that we believe are important for us to keep an eye on in these last days. And we began to do these broadcasts about a year ago now, it's come up to. And we started doing these because we kept hearing from our brethren that people were checked out of the news and did not have any idea what was going on. And so on the one hand, I understand that. We can certainly understand why people might be a little disconnected from the news in this hour, especially with the amount of propaganda. On the other hand, the scripture is clear about keeping an eye on and watching, therefore, these things as they come to pass, that we may be awake and aware in this hour, not like the children of the darkness who are caught like a thief in the night, but children of light who are awake and who are paying attention as we see the day approaching. And so we like to say around here, we want you to be aware, we want you to be informed, but not overwhelmed. And so that is something that we work hard on. And tonight we're going to be covering a number of different stories. And again, for those that are here for the first time, we have remnantwatch.com. The link is in the description, where you'll find all the stories that we're going to discuss, not only in tonight's weekly news update, but in previous weekly news updates as well, so that you're able to go back and look at the stories that we've covered in the past and watch the trends, watch as things develop. And so that's part of being a watchman. That's part of watching, is not just being aware, but also tracking progress, tracking a trend. If you're a lookout, you're not only going to see something in the distance, but you're going to track its trajectory and begin to anticipate. And so as you begin to get much sharper, and all of you are getting very sharp in your discernment, you're able to see the machinations that are going on behind the scenes, which is the intention of this broadcast. It's not just to inform you of news headlines that you can find yourself, but instead for us to keep an eye on the overall trajectory and watching things unfold as we see the day approaching according to the scripture. And so thank you again for those of you giving us a 5x5, and appreciate those of you over on Rumble. Since we're not going to be going over any medical information tonight, we're hoping we'll be safe on YouTube as well. So we're blasting this out in every way that we can to encourage our brothers and sisters, and also to ensure that we keep you informed. We don't want this surprise stuff is something that they like to do, just to be sure. And speaking of surprises, this last week, the world was shaken by what many were calling a surprise. You, who are the sharp, wise remnant students that are awake following Messiah, were not caught by surprise. We'd been watching for some time as there were various efforts to stoke up and to create conflict, and we were watching this manifest. So we're not as surprised as perhaps some are, but nevertheless, that's the general consensus throughout the earth, is this giant surprise going on right now. And of course, our top story is Netanyahu says Israel is at war as Hamas launches a surprise air and ground attack from Gaza. Now, you're probably noting a little bit of the, well, I'm just not as convinced as some are that this was a surprise. I find it very hard to believe that the same security forces that could detect a cockroach going across the border we're suddenly surprised by these contraptions, um, and and we're overwhelmed, if you will. I'm certain that there were certain people who were caught by surprise, but I find it very hard to believe. And if your meter is going off, if you know what I mean, if you're starting to go, uh, hmm, if you're doing that, well, then you're sharp, and I believe your discernment is awakening, and it is good that you have that discernment, because it should not surprise anyone that these things began to manifest. We were talking about this stoke up for some time, because again, when we see major conflagrations, what did we talk about? We talked about the fact that this is the opportunity that many times is utilized to bring about change. Okay. And then you're telegraphing, a nation is telegraphing its weakness and its division, which we talked about weeks ago. And what is likely to occur? Well, your enemies are going to be emboldened. And so, again, I have a hard time with the concept of surprise, but that's the narrative that's being promoted. So we're going to go with that for now. But nevertheless, I would suggest everyone be a bit skeptical of that. Netanyahu says Israel is at war after Hamas launches a surprise air and ground attack from Gaza, which comes coincidentally at a time when politically there was a need for some cover in Israel. And so this is a very, very dangerous thing. And so, again, and here we're hearing right from Jerusalem, and store shelves are not empty. People are out and about and living their lives. And so some of this is, again, theatric in nature. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu declared that the country is at war on Saturday after Palestinian militants in Gaza fired a deadly barrage of rockets and sent gunmen into Israeli territory in a major escalation of the long-running conflict between the two sides. The Israeli military said about 2,200 rockets were launched, and I've continued to hear a number of different numbers here, but this is some of the more latest information. About 2,200 rockets were launched in the Gaza Strip onto Israel, while armed terror groups infiltrated into Israel by land, sea, and air on paragliders. Okay, so right here is where they start to lose me. Okay, and again, maybe it starts to lose you a little bit too, because if you're telling me that their sophisticated defense systems were defeated by paragliders, I'm gonna have a hard time keeping it together. I'm gonna have a hard time, taking that seriously. And then again, this is not to say that there isn't serious issues here, but I'm having a hard time buying that. I gotta say, um, you know, they are pretty sophisticated in their military. They have capability to see things moving, heating up, being lit, being ignited. I mean, I'm sorry, I'm just not buying that. That's not selling to me. And I'm pretty sure most of you are starting to go, what? What's going on? Um, and so, is this some type of manipulation? And of course, we have no choice because of what we've been through than to say, we've got to take a look at that as a possibility. Are we being manipulated? It's possible, right? Okay. And so we're starting to see a flood of headlines now that are sort of supporting this narrative. Worse than ISIS, Hamas's terrorists are beheading Israeli soldiers in sickening footage. And so we have seen this before. This was the ISIS tactics that were used, if you remember, to stoke a tremendous amount of energy up to send troops in and fight against the evil bad guy, right? So This tactic has been used before. Hamas violence in Israel has been described as worse than ISIS. So, again, invoking directly that imagery in the mind of the reader and in the people that repeat the story. So, once again, invoking that imagery. As images shared online show a purported beheading of an Israeli Defense Force soldiers, and this comes as the death toll is estimated to be over 700 following Hamas's brutal assault on southern Israel. And Hamas terrorists have been piling up the bodies of 260 young ravers at a horrific massacre at a music festival. And so this is, again, striking abject terror in the hearts of the populace. Of course, those that want that to be the case are benefiting from that. They want there to be a state of fear and siege, which, again, the scripture describes often that people will be in the siege in the cities that are under assault, if you will. And so this, again, is something that we need to be careful about. And I'm very grateful that we have someone there in Jerusalem that can tell us from there, from the street, if you will, if people are running, panicking in the street. And if instead what you're described is, no, they're going to dinner, they're fine, they're not acting, then you know that a lot of this is being theatrically enhanced. And so there again is the benefit of communication. And thank you to all of us, all the remnant that are awake throughout the earth. So this is a good thing. So we can kind of compare notes. Not to say that there isn't loss of life. There clearly is. And not to say this isn't a serious matter, because it clearly is. When they start calling up 300,000 reservists, that's not a light matter. Okay, they've just interrupted the lives of 300,000 people. They told them they can't go to work that next day. They now have to go out in uniforms and defend and fight and stand a post. And none of them are really aware of really what's going on. They're not getting any much more information than you would be getting in the public. And so just understand that, folks. In Jerusalem, Israel has drafted a record 300,000 reservists in its response to a multi-front Hamas attack from Gaza, and is going on the offensive. And so now we're seeing them now going on a proactive or a counteroffensive, which, if you wanted to do this counteroffensive but wanted to have the moral high ground, then you would need your enemy to attack you first, so that you would then have the moral high ground, the international moral high ground, to go onslaught crazy on the other side. And so it looks an awful lot like a setup from the get up. And that's, again, we're just paying attention. We're just watching. We're just observing in light of Bible prophecy how these things are coming to pass. And you have to take into consideration the possibilities for escalation of this type of thing. So, when you have them mentioning and attempting to draw in verbally, not only Iran, but Lebanon, which is right there north of Israel, and you're seeing a lot of conversation that involves Lebanon and Hezbollah. So they're trying to invoke or provoke a greater conflict. Whether you can see it or not, I don't know, but this is how it looks to me. And now missiles from Lebanon threaten to blow up the wider Israeli war. So again, why even discuss this? But this is right out there in the news. Guided missiles and artillery shells from Lebanon pounded targets in Israel Sunday morning as war in the Middle East threatened to spin out of control. The militant group Hezbollah, which is also a powerful political party in Lebanon, claimed responsibility for the attacks on a disputed territory in the north of Israel hours after President Biden had warned them not to get involved. So told them not to get involved, and they got involved. Maybe some people should be quiet because no one's listening to them. Their net effect is negative, right? If you go out and say, hey, you guys stop it, and they fight harder, you should maybe be quiet. You're not helping. Just say it. And I mean, this is a little nuts, So they get told stay out of it, and what do? They start shooting stuff off. It's almost as if it's on cue, and this has got me going. Things to make you go. Yeah, right. So I again, I think we need to pray for the innocent people who are the pawns in these machinations, and the innocent who are unfortunately used in these various conflicts. And these are the people that really get my heart, is that they don't even know what's going on. Hezbollah is issuing threats to Israel and the US as Hamas war is escalating. So and don't take lightly these threats, because again, if one country can be surprised by hang gliders, they can pull that maneuver elsewhere as well. And so the Lebanese militant group Hezbollah issued a threat to Israel and the United States, a country whose southern border is as open as a Walmart at noon. You know what I mean? So um, suggesting that it can get further involved in support of Hamas as the war escalates. Hamas, a militant Palestinian group which the U.S. designates as a terrorist organization, launched a surprise attack on Israel on Saturday. So again, continuing this narrative that it was a surprise attack. Israel is the innocent victim. And always be careful when the powerful run to victimhood. And here we see the death toll from Hamas onslaught passes over 800, over 100 kidnapped. And this is the innocent in the crossfire that we have to keep in prayer. Over 100 kidnapped as Israel strikes Gaza, 2,200 wounded. And so this is where we are right now. And folks, again, I don't want to minimize the real human tragedy here, because there's real lives at stake. There's real families being devastated by these conflicts, and it can spread to other countries. What I'm telling you is that these narratives that are pumped out of news media are questionable, and understanding that these things are being manipulated may help you make better decisions. Because after all, how many things have we found out 6 months, a year, 2 years, 5 years after the fact, that we were being lied to at the time that the event was going on? Many, many times, too many times for us to count. And so it's wise for us to take a step back, let the dust clear, and give us an opportunity to see who is doing what in the theater, if you will. Because, now we're hearing, of course, the threats, and a mighty vengeance is coming, and the mighty hand of Israel is about. Well, everyone knows that Israel has strong military strength. And so, nevertheless, these countries still, or these groups are still willing to throw themselves to the hazard for what they believe are injustices and for what they believe are valid reasons. Whether you agree with them or not, you have to stop and take a moment and say, that's a lot of motivation. Think about how angry we'd have to be here in the West to get to that point where you're willing to sacrifice your lives to push against what you believe to be an oppressive government. And so once you start thinking of it that way, you start going, what am I not being told? What information is not reaching us? Okay. And again, if you know about the orchestration of the first two world wars, if you're a student of history and you know about the Albert Pike prophecy, then you know that there was a third world war prophesied. Again, this is what makes this a religious conflict. So these folks believe in a prophetic declaration that prophesies their new world order, basically. And this conflict has to erupt in the Middle East. So there are forces that are at work with the intention of bringing people bringing these forces of the Judeo-Christian West and Islam into conflict for mutual annihilation purposes. And that was declared. It's not a hidden thing. It's something that was openly declared, that the nihilists, the destroyers of civilization, would be released, which we all can see in the nations today. And then they would bring about this cataclysm, this social cataclysm. And again, we see the prepositioning of different things going on in the nations. And so again, this is why it's important to know, to be aware of your surroundings, to be aware of the time you're in. Not a time to be a vagabond. This is a time to be connecting in and settling where Elohim would have you be. The U.S. is now getting involved, of course, immediately getting involved in responding to this latest provocation. And I don't think they needed a lot of excuses, but they're jumping on this one. And so they're going to send a carrier strike group. And so when they say they're sending in a carrier, by the way, anytime they say they're sending in an aircraft carrier, know that that always implies an entire strike group. A carrier never goes anywhere by itself. It always has an escort of a number of ships that are part of its what's called a battle group. And Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin said Sunday he has ordered the Ford carrier strike group to sail to the Eastern Mediterranean to be ready to assist Israel after the attack by Hamas that has left more than 1,000 dead on both sides. Americans reported to be among those killed and missing. Oh, and that's another element, is they're no longer afraid to grab up Americans, seeing as our current administration does in fact pay bounties. So that used to be a policy forever. America doesn't negotiate with terrorists. Well, apparently now they do. Okay, the newest and most advanced aircraft carrier, it's approximately 5,000 sailors and deck of warplanes, will be accompanied by cruisers and destroyers. See that? So again, it's not just the aircraft carrier, it's also the cruisers and destroyers in a show of force that is meant to be ready to respond to anything from possibly interdicting additional weapons, from reaching Hamas and conducting surveillance. Now, the surveillance capability is extraordinary. So extraordinary that I bet that they could probably catch paragliders before they would take off. That's how good their surveillance capability is. But wouldn't they have already had that surveillance capability in theater? Just saying. Like, so why do you need the surveillance? Oh, so you can see if there's going to be any more surprise attacks planned? And are you going to catch them before they do that? Okay. I mean, when you really slow this stuff down, you realize how much we're being manipulated, right? And how much you're being conned. And I know Israel's border policy. They shoot first, ask questions later. So this whole, they just jumped across the border thing like unannounced. I'm sorry, but that one just, as soon as I heard it, I'm like, no, that somebody had to say that was okay. Somebody had to somebody was asleep at the panel in order for that to be the case. Okay. And so the question you have to ask is, how many more times will people be asleep at the panel? If that's the level of incompetence that you're dealing with, then should you have any confidence at all? Because hey, in order for them to have surveillance capability, you've got to bring in an aircraft battle group so you can turn on the radar. Nobody's buying this. I'm sorry, but that's hard to believe, and I believe it's all being manipulated to bring us to a particular place. And as you know, there are those that the scripture in the book of Revelation calls warmongers. Warmongers. So what's a warmonger? Is someone who likes war, who benefits from war, who makes cheddar from war. They are definitely involved here. I mean, they're not, there's, those folks are not sitting there going, Oh, wow. Oh, do you need us? So understand that this is where we're at. And Putin, if you remember from our previous reports, we've been reporting that he's using great restraint in Ukraine and that he's also at the same time been threatening the West with his weaponry, right? So Putin has been letting Western nations know. He flat out threatened Great Britain. He said he would bury the island. Okay, that's a big boast because that would require quite a weapon. And then we saw recently, I believe it was last week, we talked about the new 14,000-mile missile, I believe it was, that he's been testing and so forth. So there's been a lot of chatter about Russian equipment testing. And now Putin says Russia has tested his next generation nuclear weapon. And so this is, what's giving them a tremendous amount of confidence. President Vladimir Putin said on Thursday that Russia had successfully tested a potent new strategic missile and declined to rule out the possibility it could carry out weapons tests involving nuclear explosions for the first time in more than 3 decades. So they wouldn't even commit that they weren't going to test it further. There are some people that aren't playing the game. And these folks in the East tend not to be playing the same game that are being played in the West. And so they're actually preparing for massive levels of conflict. And as we talked about last week, the Russian government ran drills to prepare its people for a nuclear strike. Now, so last week, they did this as a nation. Did they do that in your town? Did you have an underground bunker to run to? Were you given an assignment? Were you told what to do? Were you prepared for this type of conflict? No, you weren't. And so, again, there's a very different attitude going on. You see a very different seriousness going on in the East, if you will, compared to the sort of laissez-faire, throw caution to the wind arrogance going on in the West. Very, very different, folks. And Putin is making some very strong statements. And this report just came out. He warns that Russia's nukes when Russia nukes America. So I took note of this because of the word when. Look at that. It's right. It's not if. If there's a conflict, when Russia nukes America, there's no chance of survival and there will be no single enemy left. So these are very big words being spoken to the nuclear power on the earth, right? You would think they'd be afraid to say stuff like that to the United States of America, unless it's planned. Okay, Russians are feverishly preparing to fight a nuclear war, but our leaders continue to insist that nuclear war is not a threat because the Russians would never use their nuclear weapons against us, no matter how much we provoke them. And again, this is the general thinking in the West, is that they believe the mutual assured destruction doctrine, such that they don't believe that there can be any threat, credible threat from any superpower, because we've been convinced as a nation and as a people that that would be foolhardy, so therefore no one would ever do that. And I would suggest to you that the people of Sodom and Gomorrah probably thought that they would go on forever as well. And unfortunately, that wasn't the case, and they found out. So they messed around, and they found out. And I do believe that there are other countries and other world powers besides Russia that pose serious and significant threats to the West, and specifically to the United States. And again, I point to a porous southern border with military-age men that have been pouring in for quite some time, with almost no vetting. So we don't know what other plans, what other hang glider plans have been orchestrated and will surprise the world in the future. We don't have any idea. And we don't necessarily know who the players might be. Continue calling Iran the bad guy, and maybe you'll find out that Iran decides to become the bad guy. And so, again, a lot of what we're seeing is provoking. And so, and I do believe that we've crossed the point, we've crossed the Rubicon, if you will, where now there's going to be actual punches thrown. You know how when you see guys egging for a fight, and you can tell when we've crossed the um, just making insults point, and we're now getting down to somebody's about to get punched. We've reached that place where there's now going to be more aggressive actions going on the international scale or scene. And so I do believe that this marks the trigger point, and Israel was hit, and some might say hit first. But America is about to get nailed. I believe that the prophecies concerning the United States of America will come to pass, and I believe that we're watching maybe the beginning of that trigger point right now. And one of the things that we are paying attention to here in the West, and something that I've been hitting on the last several weeks, is the very demonic and satanic attacks against fellowships, against the household of faith, against believers. And it is being done from the inside. It is being done by those who infiltrate your fellowships, infiltrate your gatherings, infiltrate your sincere desire to worship Yahuwah Elohim, and they begin to either try to teach or undermine in some way. And we've been tracking some of this from the ministry standpoint, so from this side of the ledger. But now there are reports coming out that there are actual satanic cabals who are intentionally and deliberately infiltrating and attempting to destroy Judeo-Christian Western society from the inside out. And so when the FBI is warning about it, maybe folks will take it just a hair more seriously. The FBI is warning about a global satanic pedophile cult. What's this now? The FBI is calling them a satanic pedophile cult. Okay? I would probably call them the Pharisees, but I digress. Pedophile cult seeking to destroy Judeo-Christian Western society. These are extremely dangerous, folks. The FBI has issued a public warning about violent online groups that target minors on messaging platforms and encouraging them to live stream. Watch this, it's very clever. Live stream acts of self-harm and produce child sexual abuse material. The warning comes after the discovery of a satanic cult. The FBI's advisory issued last month is the first formal mention of a group known as 764, an offshoot of the Order of Nine Angles, a violent, subversive amalgam of esoteric Hitler worship, Satanism, and Wiccan tenets by any American law enforcement agency. The agency learned about the group after the arrest of Angel Almeida, a 23-year-old resident of Astoria, Queens, on gun possession charges in November 2021, according to The Guardian. And so the group targets minors between ages of 8 and 17, particularly those with mental health issues. The FBI said, adding they use threats, blackmail, and manipulation to get their victims to record or live stream self-harm, sexually explicit acts, or even suicide. And the footage is then circulated among members to extort victims further and exert control over them. Now, one of the things that we're watching a lot of is these what we would consider in the in my day and age like a CIA type tactics where they film somebody and then blackmail them. It's starting to become common. This is why I believe there are the uptick of hidden camera crimes where you're seeing people doing hidden cameras. I think one of the things that this could be used for is for blackmail. And when you have compromising imagery or video, then you could use that and you can say, hey, if you don't do what I want, I'm going to release this video. And that is nothing new. Entire governments have been controlled by secret hidden video camera footage. Entire political parties have been controlled by hidden camera footage. And so it's an incredibly effective technique. And so this is one of the reasons why I believe it is extremely diabolical. It is extremely nefarious to do such things. And we've been talking about this recently, how there's been an uptick in reporting of hidden cameras, hidden recordings, and so forth. And we saw that this, of course, hit even in the ministry, which I think is one of the most egregious places that you're going to see those kinds of crimes. And so you're seeing this being done by people that you thought were leaders. Okay, so this is meant to cause a collapse. So this is sabotage in the worst kind of way. You put your confidence in this youth leader or this pastor or what have you, and he turns out to be the ringleader of the cult or what have you, right? This will be devastating to people. This devastates. It hurts their hearts, and I believe this is intentionally done. So this is the level of wickedness that we're dealing with here, folks, which I know it's hard to imagine, but that's what I believe is happening. And so when we see stories like this, where a Florida pastor has been accused of running, and again, here's another case here, an organized retail crime ring hawking $3 million worth of stolen items online. And this pastor, Robert Dell, 57, facing multiple charges for running an organized retail crime ring. And he used his position as a pastor and a halfway house director to get people to steal for him. Okay. And so what is this? But if this isn't infiltration, I don't know what you would call that. That is open infiltration. And again, these are spirits that we're dealing with. We're not dealing with people. We're dealing with spiritual wickedness in high places, but they are subject to it. They're under a curse. They don't even know what is controlling them. If you were to grab up these guys, and a lot of times when they grab them up and they finally catch them, the kinds of confessions that they get, I don't know what made me do it. I don't know why I did that. I don't know why I can't stop. One guy said, I can't, why they're making basically illegal content, video content of children, and saying, I don't know why I can't stop. Hello, can somebody say demon? Right? And so you understand that this is an effort that is being done to morally discourage and bring to the place of despair the only group that can stand a chance at opposing this spiritual warfare, this onslaught. So when you see that, you say, yes, I get it now. Now I see why they're attacking this way. It's like a death of 1,000 cuts. It's these little things that are constantly jabbing away and undermining our confidence. And again, putting us in a state of continued siege. And so I warn you about that, and I just sort of divert away from some of our war coverage, because you can look at this war stuff and just think people are just angry. They're just angry. Angry men fight other angry men. Two angry men fight. No, I mean, road rage actually has more sense than some of these things that you're seeing manipulated by, those that have a lot of money and what have you. And so this is all gaslighting and bringing us to a place where we're under siege. So under siege puts you mentally in a state where you'll accept things that you otherwise wouldn't have accepted. That sense of, well, we don't have any choice. Well, we just got to do it. Well, we're just going to have to get through this. And you've now relinquished all other options. You've given in because the adversary has convinced you that you're under siege, and therefore now have to suspend some of your higher thinking to accept whatever it is that they're putting in front of you. And those of you that are catching it, you're sharp. Some of you are very, very sharp. And so you're catching this stuff going, I see their game here. And I commend you for your intuitions and your insight. I do believe that Elohim is awakening many of you to what is going on. And this is the kind of story that does that. U.S. F-16 fighter jet shoots down an armed Turkish drone over Syria, right? So what does this do? This puts you in a dun dun dun, we have a breaking news update kind of feeling, right? Because these are the kinds of things that if they keep happening, you could see them escalate. And because you don't know when they'll escalate, they keep you in that frayed nerve sort of state. An U.S. F-16 fighter jet shot down an armed Turkish drone that was operating near American troops in Syria Thursday after several warnings, according to U.S. officials. The shootdown came after repeated communications to stay away. You stay away, you drone. Stay away from U.S. ground troops near al-Hasaka in northeastern Syria. This is believed to be the first time the U.S. has shot down a drone from Turkey, a NATO ally. So Turkey not playing ally very well. So Turkey may have decided to change its allegiances and just didn't quite let everyone know. So this is about to get very dicey in this whole region of the world, because of the fact that, again, the major powers are already engaged. And if you've forgotten, we've talked about this. Taiwan, remember them, is still in play. So this huge attention shift is now going over to the Middle East, right? But guess what? We still have Eastern Europe as a hot war. We've got another Eastern European conflict. Forget the name of the town, but the Serbian forces were arrayed against Kosovo. And so there's that conflict that is now potentially going to erupt. And now we're hearing, of course, that what a shock that China is going to be buzzing Taiwan with a record number of jet planes in this time period. Just coincidentally, just because they just decided this was a good time. The world seems to be in a good place for receiving this kind of activity. China's Air Force is poised to once again break the record for the number of warplanes it has sent across the median line, the midpoint of the Taiwan Strait that Beijing and Taipei previously tacitly agreed not to cross. China has been unilaterally ignoring this in recent years. As Taiwan prepares for its presidential election, a contest in which relations with its giant neighbor always loom large, People's Liberation Army Air Force aircraft have crossed into Taiwan's air defense identification zone a total of 1,390 times in 2023. That's a lot of provoking. Okay. And they're basically trying to start a fight. And the people of Taiwan are not necessarily interested in a fight. However, again, some of this is theater. I do believe that there is a lot of reunification effort that is peaceful that will probably be successful. So much of this saber rattling, again, is to fray the nerves of the people, which is why people check out. And again, understandably, why they check out. But nevertheless, this is what the effort is for. And what is this really meant to do? Well, it's covering up something that was right in your face, folks. And now, you may have forgotten this, but because we do these weekly, it's a little easier to keep track. Back in June, we covered the House of Representatives trying to come up with a measure to fund the government until 2025 is what they told us back in June. And so they ended up passing it. It was a big deal. And then funny how in September, just 3 months later, we're dealing with this issue again and being told that, we've got to kick this, we've got to pass another measure, right? And there needs to be a new resolution passed. Well, what happened to the resolution that we just passed in June? So apparently that didn't take you to 2025 like you thought it would. You're seeing the collapse of the US dollar in very, very real ways that are going to affect your real lives, not imagination, not manipulation. No, the cost of things internationally is about to skyrocket. This is going to affect your at-home food costs, at-home sundry goods. It's going to affect every segment of our society as these dollars come home. And we're watching a very consistent and coordinated effort to dump the U.S. treasuries, which is what funds the government, if you will. They have to sell treasuries in order to do that. And so if those of you that didn't know that, that's how your government in the West is funded. And so for the first time in modern history, and I mean by modern history, the last 50 or so years, we're seeing a massive, massive collapse in the treasury market. And so there's a collapse in treasury bonds, now ranks among the worst market crashes in history. So this is being covered up by all this other news. You should always know by now that whenever there's a lot of noise in one direction, it's because they want you to not look in another direction. Okay, so since March of 2020, Treasury bonds with maturities of 10 years or more have plummeted 46%. That's a huge drop, Bloomberg says. And that's just under losses seen in the stock market when the dot-com bubble burst. The bond rout is worse than the one seen in 1981 when the 10-year yield neared 16%. The market sell-off that's sending yields soaring is starting to eclipse some of the most extreme market meltdowns of the past era. So these are very dangerous words. When you hear the words in the financial community, the words meltdown, collapse, they don't like those words. Like they're scared of those words because they usually cost people a lot of money. So when they're outright saying this is pretty bad, this is as bad as we've seen, this is what's being covered up. And I believe that it's going to massively hit like a rogue wave. It's going to hit the Western nations pretty hard economically. I expect that it should be fairly soon. There are rumors of those being paid by the UN who are infiltrating Western nations. There are rumors of false flags that may be instigated. There's all kinds of potential dangers that we face in the near term. But I do believe it is the near term because, after all, they can't finance these things forever. And when they begin to pull the trigger on things, we have to then anticipate that there'll be other triggers pulled. Kind of like a fireworks display, we haven't seen the grand finale just yet. And so new data is now coming out that would indicate that 2024 is going to be a major, major year for collapse. And so new data reveals a crash not seen since the Great Depression could hit in 2024. And if the White House and Congress don't cut spending soon, the results could be catastrophic. There's no way to stop the catastrophic part. Okay. So them adding this, oh, you guys better stop. You better behave yourselves, as if they could do anything at this point that would stop what is inevitable. I don't believe it matters what they do at this point because this die was cast a long time ago. As the White House continues to tout the alleged achievements of the president's Bidenomics agenda, a growing amount of data indicates that a gigantic economic crisis could be right around the corner. Most disturbingly, one important economic indicator that's currently flashing hasn't appeared since the 1930s during the height of the Depression. If the White House and Congress do not cut inflation causing government spending soon, the results could be catastrophic. And now, folks, again, we can go into all kinds of theories, and people can start to speculate as to why they believe this and that is happening. But understand that these are all the Hegelian dialectic: problem, reaction, solution. They want there to be collapse. They want there to be war. They want there to be the problems in the economy, because it changes your thinking and moves people into the thinking processes that are profitable for those who have been orchestrating these machinations. And so what you're going to see is going to be a number of efforts to steer social engineering and to bring about a social change, a change in the way we view things, a change in the way that we conduct ourselves. And you can see it as we go back to the effort by the Satanists to defame and to undermine the credibility of the gospel. And they did this going back hundreds of years by attacking the very scripture itself, with the intention that in the end, because of what they did, the things that they went into the scripture to do, we would be listless and without compass in this hour. And of course, they underestimate, and always do underestimate, the response of he who sits in the heavens and watches the affairs of men. And so I believe that you're going to continue to see their plans frustrated. I believe that you, the remnant, represent the group on earth who, when you band together, when you unite, when you pray, you frustrate what costs millions, maybe billions of dollars to get set up, and your prayers frustrate their plans. When they do wicked things with an intention of bringing about a certain agenda, and you, the remnant, begin to pray and cry out to heaven, it's amazing how that agenda doesn't succeed. And so even though they spent millions and even billions of dollars getting certain things prepared for this hour, isn't it amazing that they can't defeat the remnant in this hour? You who are the believers, who not only have the testimony of Yahushua HaMashiach, but also keep his commandments. You are that group that the dragon is fighting against. And I believe you are the answer to the question, who can make war with the beast? And so I encourage you all out there to continue to hold your ground, to hold your post, to keep your meme war going, to keep waking people up around you, to ignore your critics, to ignore those that are offended at you, to keep walking by your Pharisees. You all are going to have them, and continue to awaken your neighbors. Encourage them to connect as we are connecting here on channels like this one. Encourage them to join together with their brothers and sisters. Stay alert, stay aware, intercede, and be a blessing unto one another. We're going to overcome this wickedness with good. We overcome evil with good. And so, yeah, we see their machinations. We see the plans. We see the games that are being played. And we understand that we're up against a very manipulative, wicked, dastardly enemy. But we also know that the power of good just continues to overwhelm it. And so from whether it is weather weaponry, or other weaponry that is being used in this hour, it will be the saints, you, the remnant, that will help overcome every one of these things the devil throws at us. You know, it's easy for us to allow ourselves to become overwhelmed. It's easy for us to think, oh no, what's next? But the Bible warned us that there would be wars and rumors of wars, and that see that you be not troubled. For these things were prophesied to come. Okay? And so the end is not yet. That's what he said. Excuse me. And he wants us to remember to exhort one another. And all the more as we see the day approaching. And I believe that one of the things that the enemy is trying to do is to get inside our heads and get us to start to believe that it's, that we're all just going to be destroyed. It's all going to be, it's inevitable. And so they push these headlines and they push these thoughts that are meant to get you into a place of almost defeatism, where you feel discouraged and your energy levels drop considerably, is you almost feel like what's the point? There's no hope. But the reality is that the blessing is in our unity. Psalm 133 gives you the answer. He says that where brethren dwell together in unity, there, where? There, Yahuwah Elohim commands the blessing, even life evermore. So he has given a word, a promise, that he will bring the commanded blessing. That's like, I'm going to bless you whether you like it or not kind of blessing. That's that kind of blessing that you say, oh, I don't, no, it's okay. And it comes anyway. That's the kind of blessing that you say, no, I've had enough and it comes anyhow. That's the kind of blessing that you don't know what to do with it. And you're like, I don't know what to do with all these. Where am I going to put it? That's the commanded blessing. Okay. And this is what he wants to pour upon you, pour upon all of his children. But the critical component is that we have to band together and unite. This is the critical key. So stop all the competitiveness, stop division, stop all backbiting and devouring one another. Every form of weight and sin, we cast it aside, come together and dwell together in unity. Then when we pray, our prayers are not hindered and we win these battles. And folks, I don't know if you noticed, but this is the only way we have a chance to win, because in the natural, we can't fight these things naturally. We can't fight in the natural sense, in the natural way. Okay. There, the adversary will destroy you if you try to engage in this way. But if you remember that the weapons of your warfare are mighty through Elohim to the pulling down of strongholds, and you share things, continue to do the meme things that you're doing, continue to share information, continue to minister to people, and most importantly, let your light so shine before men that they see your good work and glorify your Abba which is in heaven. Now you're going to be effective, because now he will confirm that word with signs and wonders following. And so let me encourage you not to be afraid to love your brother in this hour, to love the stranger, to love your sister. He is calling any and everyone who would come in, who would come into Yasharel, who would come into the household of faith, that they would come now in this hour. He is drawing them in, right? And so now is the time, I believe, with this backdrop of horrible things going on, this is our opportunity to shine our light in this darkness and be an encouragement, especially to those who are struggling in this hour, especially those that are alone. And my heart goes out, especially to all my friends who are fellow introverts, my brothers and sisters out there who prefer to be quiet. I love your notes. You come out of your quiet place to drop me a note to let me know that you're there. And I find that to be incredibly precious. I know what that is for you and what an effort it is for you to do that. And so I have a great respect and appreciation for all of you who aren't normally very loud and are normally quite quiet. When you come on out and you let us know that you're there, we appreciate it. And just like you don't want to feel alone, neither do we. So thank you for taking the time to share, to encourage. Your likes, your comments, your notes, they're all a blessing. And please subscribe if you're not subscribed, and encourage your friends to subscribe so we can continue looking at the same things together. Coming together is the critical word for this hour. And so don't let anyone talk you into strife and division. Anyone who is trying to bring you into angst and be against your brother is working for your enemy. At this hour, what the Ruach of Elohim, what the blessed spirit of Elohim is doing, is drawing together his people in one accord. Amen. And so thank you to every one of you who encourage and bless your brothers and sisters out there. You guys are our heroes, man. We really appreciate you. When we see it, it brings tears to our eyes. I love working myself out of a job. I love seeing, all these different people teaching and ministering and coming up with memes and graphics and different ways that You're helping people see things they didn't see before. Way to go. Way to go. Really proud of you all. Thankful for every one of you, and really grateful that I get to be here during this time to see your light shine before men. Well, thank you so much for joining us. We'll be here again next week on Rumble and on Facebook, hopefully on YouTube as well. And I pray that this broadcast has been a blessing to you. Again, please like and share. Thank you so much for joining us. May Elohim bless each and every one of you. Shalom.